One of the questions that people ask me all the time is, Kasim, why is it that you decided to become a psychotherapist? Why did you become a counselor? And I say to people all the time that I didn't know that I wanted to become a psychotherapist, because for me, becoming a psychotherapist and a counselor wasn't because of ability, meaning I didn't determine I was like really good at it or I had an actual talent at it. For me, it was actually questions. I'd always had questions about certain things, and one of the biggest questions that I had, which therapy could answer and psychotherapy could answer, was why is it that some people manage to break the mold? Why is it that some people are raised in a racist family and then they're the first not to become racist? Why is it that some people are born on a council estate, everyone they know lives on a council estate, and then they're the first to get out of the council estate and become a multimillionaire? Why is it that you can have in a family lots of people on medication, lots of people depressed in the family, lots of people have anxiety, lots of people have mental health disorders, and then there's one person who breaks the mold and in that family isn't? Why is it that there are some people who end up being brought up in dysfunction, they end up being brought up in a lot of trauma, in a lot of unhealthy patterns of behavior and dynamics, and yet they're able to break them? That's what I wanted to understand. I could never understand this question. And one of the things that I found was that therapy could answer many of the questions that I had, in particular this one. And one of the things that I found was that part of the reason why these people are able, this is not the only reason, but this is one of the reasons they're able to break these patterns and break the mold, is usually because they've been introduced to options. If you meet people who are going down the dark path of life, who are really struggling, who are in a lot of pain, those people typically will sit in a position. So there's a type of therapy called transactional analysis, and the position that they will sit in is this position of I'm no good and you're no good. In other words, they come from a place of nihilism. They do not believe they have autonomy. They do not believe that they have choice. They do not believe that they can influence their lives, that they can have influence on other people. They don't believe that they can get better, that they can improve, that they can redeem themselves. Consequently, why try? And if you don't try, you then don't get momentum. If you don't get momentum, you then don't build opportunities, and opportunities don't come your way. And what I found, and I remember when because I was journaling about this, and I was like, when did I recognize that there was like, that I had options? And I'll never forget it. I had been around at one of my friend Connor's house. Connor was rich. Should I tell you how I know Connor was rich? Because when I went round to Connor's house, this is the first time I'd been round to Connor's house, Connor in his kitchen, he had an island. You know what I mean by an island, yeah? So you got the kitchen, and then you got sort of like a table or like a island literally in the middle of the kitchen. In the middle of the kitchen, of the island, me and Connor were sat on the edge. In the middle of the island, there was a bowl with loads and loads of fruit. And I'm watching Connor's dad and Connor's mum in the kitchen, and they're going in the cupboards and they're making all of this food and all of this sort of stuff. And Connor's dad says to me, do you guys want some fruit whilst you're waiting for the dinner to cook? Now, many of you will know I was born in Uganda, and Uganda, for those of you who know, runs right through the equator, and any country that runs through the equator, typically the climate is a very warm climate, very tropical climate, and so Uganda is very known for fruit. So if you know me personally, you will know I love sugarcane, I love passion fruit, I love mangoes, I love tropical fruit. But in the bowl, there was a fruit I'd never seen. I know now this sounds ridiculous, but you have to understand, I grew up in a large family. We lived on a council estate. We didn't have very much money. And so in the middle of the bowl, there was a strawberry. Now, I know what it is now, but I didn't know what it was back then. And I'm watching Connor's dad. So I said, can I have a strawberry? And I'm watching Connor's dad. Well, I didn't say, can I have a strawberry? But I said, can I have that? And I'm watching Connor's dad take the strawberry. And you know, the strawberry has green bits at the end of it. I'm watching Connor's dad take the strawberry, remove the green bits, and twist the thingy off and take it off. And then he starts cutting the strawberry into pieces. And I'm watching Connor's dad and Connor's mum working in tandem, and she's wiping the board, and she's taking it, and she's putting the little green bits in the rubbish bin. She pulled out one of those drawers, and I started to cry, but I didn't know why I was crying back then, because now I'm talking on reflection, right? This is why I was saying I was journaling about this, and I start crying, and I don't know why I'm crying. The reason why I was crying is because I'm watching this with these two people. I'm watching Connor, and I began to realize, oh my God, some people live very different lives to me. Because you have to understand, me and Connor were school friends. We were in the same year group. I was bottom set, Connor was bottom set. We went to the same school. At lunchtime, we would go and play together, right? The only difference, and this is why I'd never really thought about it, was Connor lived in a massive house and I lived in a 3-bedroom house with 7 of us living in the same house. Connor had, and I know this sounds ridiculous now, but Connor had an iPod, but he had a dock. So I don't know if you remember these, but you used to have these docks where you could put your iPod in the dock and it could play the music. This was fascinating for me. I'm watching Connor's dad and Connor's mum, and I'm watching the relationship that they had, and I'm like, my God, that's not how my stepdad and my mum are. And I'm like, oh, there is choices. Like, there are different types of families, there are different types of relationships, there is different types of wealth. And so even though my path led me down the route of where I ended up an alcoholic, I ended up getting into drugs, I ended up getting into prostitution, I ended up being done for drink driving, trying to punch a police officer, I ended up in debt, all of these things, you know, homeless, gambling, porn addiction. Even though my road led down this path, every now and then I would meet people who would say to me, Kasim, you're different. I remember I really, really wanted to get into weed, like selling weed. And I remember I met this guy who sold weed, and he said to me, you shouldn't do this job. You're different. And this would happen all the time. And I remember Donna, I used to have a friend called Ben Shepherd. Ben Shepherd's mum, Donna, would always say to me, Kasim, you're different to a lot of boys. You're going to do something great one day. And this would happen all the time. People would say this to me, and I don't know why people were saying this to me. Anyway, lo and behold, what I've come to discover is that I am somebody who is curious. I am somebody who's been brought up and have been shown that there are differences, that people can make choices, that people have autonomy, that there are different ways of manifesting in the world, that there is different ways of relating to people. There are different choices we can make. And whenever I meet someone who's breaking the mold, who's done something that they shouldn't have done, many times what that person at the core believes is that they believe that they have a choice, that they can act differently, that they can literally affect their life, they can influence life itself, that they can poke at life, they can make a choice and start moving in the direction of that choice, and eventually they will get to the place where they want to. They may not get to exactly where they want to get to, but they roughly get in that direction. So for example, some people are like, do you know what? Everyone in my family is poor. I'm using this as an example. I want to be the first to become a millionaire. They may not become a millionaire, but they may get to, let's say, £600,000. Now, some people would call that failure, but I call that success.